And we're live. We are back with our second CIA exploration.
Oh,
We didn't want to stop with we didn't want to try to throw everything in. Just the film alone was enough to do an entire hour. And now we have the CIA in the news. So I'm back again with Mark Groubert, the what do you call yourself? The Forrest Gump of pop culture. How are you doing?
Yeah, it sounds funny because years ago somebody said you're the Forrest Gump of pop culture because I told them I was at every seminal event in pop culture history, which just happens to be an oddity. And he said, you're the Forrest Gump of pop culture.
Well, hey, it works. I'm trying to figure out, because you and Barnes are so similar in terms of your deep encyclopedic knowledge of just like all kinds of things going on. I guess he would be more on the historical political side. You're more on the pop culture side. Well, obviously, there's a lot of overlapping in there.
That's true. And I did a lot more acid than Barnes did. I can guarantee you that. So I'm coming from a psychedelic side also that Barnes is definitely not coming from. But that may allow him to be sharper and more wittier and have a better memory than me. But I had much more fun than Barnes, and everyone knows that.
Okay, now to the show this week, we're going to start with one guy here in a second.
Hold on. I just want to interrupt you for 1 second. Wish you a happy birthday, Eric.
Oh, thank you.
Everybody knows it's your birthday, and also Courtney. It's her birthday too. She's in Arizona, so both of you. Just want to wish you both a very, very happy birthday tonight. Go on. Sorry.
No, thank you. Thank you very much. And anybody who wants to give a birthday present, go check out my locals at unstructured.locals.com. I'm learning from Barnes.
Don't delay.
I'm definitely learning from Barnes.
Right.
All right. No, I'm curious. Okay. You did a treatment, which was essentially a CIA and media, and you kind of put in both the news and Hollywood. You had personal experiences with the CIA being involved in film, but you reached out further to look into the news and look into children of the CIA. What sent you down this extra path?
I guess my particular experiences with the CIA, having to go to court, having them write my script or rewrite my script without me knowing it at Langley. And I began to look into what other areas of media the CIA had their tentacles in. And I was astonished to learn, as I've indicated to you, that they tend to run in families, which is a separate episode that we're going to get into of CIA family connections. They trust families. That is one of their barometers of using father, son, grandfather, relative. It gives them a certain amount of trust in their area. There's many examples we can get into in another episode of this episode. Alex Gibney and Frank Gibney, his father, working at Newsweek. Alex Gibney becoming the flavor of the month in terms of making documentaries for the CIA. And by the way, I just want to couch something here. When you say somebody is doing something for the CIA, it doesn't make their product bad. When I point out Frank Gibney's connection to Alex Gibney, people go, well, I like Alex Gibney's documentaries, as if that absolves his connection to the CIA and making their movies. I mean, it's the funniest thing I've ever heard. I like his movies. Well, the hit piece that he did on Julian Assange, a lot of us didn't like. The fact that the money was funneled through Universal Pictures, which is used as a conduit. A lot of the studios going back to 1949, especially Disney, Touchstone, and in my case, it was Spyglass, had to deal with Disney that were able to...
Ironically named.
I mean, Touchstone, like I said, was the original name of the secret project. It was called Operation Touchstone to make George Orwell's Animal Farm into the most expensive animated cartoon in world history at the time. The CIA bought the rights from his widow and was able to carve out that movie using British cover stories and a thing called Touchstone, Operation Touchstone. And
it was good. It was very well done.
It was good. And obviously, that's getting back to Alex Gibney. The documentaries are they don't hire people who make shit product. That would defeat their purpose. They're looking for the Steven Spielberg of spying, put it that way.
And to their credit,
To their credit.
Well, I have to admire them, and we talked about this before, especially with the films, and we'll be, probably talking about it here. They have to really find talented people because they don't have the actual strength to strong arm like the Department of Defense. And we discussed that, like, the Navy can say, "Oh, you wanted to have that aircraft carrier to shoot?
Mhm.
Sorry,
Yeah,
your script doesn't meet."
they have nothing to offer. That's why one of the episodes in there was Leon Panetta, head of the CIA, having a chef show come over and cook for him. I mean, just all they do is grant entrance, quote unquote, to Langley. They have nothing, Eric. You're right. There is really nothing they can offer other than people's romantic vision of the CIA and wanting to be part of that, which is a real low level of love and involvement of people who, quote unquote, want to be involved with these guys, and they prey on that too. They prey on people who want to be big fish, and keep a secret or not keep a secret. They may be vulnerable in certain areas, but I mean, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. You mentioned legacy, and I was thinking about it. Doesn't the CIA kind of stem out of sort of the Northeastern University, blue bloody type of environment? So where you have things like Skull and Bones, coincidentally, George H.W. Bush. I don't know if he was in, but George W. was in Skull and Bones. Mm-hmm. And in Yale, there's a lot of Yaleys and people like that all involved at CIA, right?
Right. Well, if you look at the new advertising, they're branching out into woke, multicultural areas now. They're not sticking.
Oh, yeah.
Those advertisements are absolutely insane.
So I'm sure that the traditionalists will love that.
Yeah,
very much.
It's 3 days of the woke condor, as I call it now. I mean, this is crazy. This is crazy. I had 2 mommies, so I belong in the CIA. I mean, those are your qualifications. At least the Ivy League. In my film that I did called The Farm, which became a Recruit, it shows them recruiting at an Ivy League institution, which is where they traditionally would recruit. Getting back to another script that I did called about Abby Hoffman, a biopic that I wrote about Abby Hoffman. Abby Hoffman later in life, in the 80s, hooked up with Amy Carter, Jimmy Carter's daughter, and formed a protest movement to ban the CIA from recruiting college students on the American campuses of the United States of America. They went to court and defeated the CIA in open court from recruiting college kids on U.S. campuses at that time. I think it's long since been eliminated or somehow overtaken, but they went to court. Abby Hoffman, the 60s, yippie, the cheerleader.
Episode to come.
And And Amy Carter, the president's daughter. You talk about strange bedfellows. I don't know if he was banging her, but who knows? Abby was a sex addict and bipolar, so anything goes there. Who knows what happened to Amy? Amy kind of disappeared. I don't know. She's not like Hillary's daughter, But anyway, so they went to court and defeated the CIA in open court, which was one of Abby's greatest achievements, according to him. And it was late in his life. It was in the 80s, right before he died, a couple of years before he committed suicide. But the fact is that they can be defeated in court. There can be victories. You don't have to live under the intimidation of this KGB thing that is now turned against us as American citizens. I mean, their domestic charter does not exist. They have an international charter. They're banned from operating on American soil. And yet, we see them, thumbing their nose, having John Brennan spying on Dianne Feinstein's computer a number of years ago, about the Guantanamo torture situation. They don't care if it's left or right. A sex addict doesn't care how hot the girl is. You know what I mean? A rape is about power. It's not about sexual attraction. And that's what it is with these guys. It's about power. It's not about Democrat or Republican or whatever. They just want to be in charge. And they, leading up to where we are now, have infiltrated the American news media to such an extent as to be the most terrifying thing in the history of the United States. I mean, for years now, I've called for a cabinet-level media czar position that can oversee the American media. And I don't mean censoring them. I don't mean, doing anything other than having to call in the president of CBS onto the carpet and say, what the hell was that last night on your national news show? And I mean, using the internal bully pulpit as a cabinet member to pressure these people into telling the truth and not having CIA and intelligence officials literally leave their organization and join them the next day with all their security clearances, Eric.
I've got a great idea. How about if social media, oh, look, we're already yellow. How about if social media were to flag, or the news is forced to flag, those cute little flags on Wikipedia now and on posts everywhere. If you post something that's against the narrative, and I'm not saying what it is because I'm already, demonetized. How about if they were actually responsible and put a little flag underneath saying known association with CIA, this analyst?
Originally, they did do that. They did do that originally, and I think they were pressured to eventually drop it. I mean, there's a number of them, when they first appeared on TV, they said former CIA analyst. That's all disappeared now. All of that stuff is gone. It's just that they're Walter Cronkite. They're the same as everybody else. I mean, like I said, to start with somebody out of the blue. I mean, Anderson Cooper, I don't know what you did on your summer vacations. This guy here, Anderson Cooper, right? So on my summer vacations, we went to the Catskills, lived in a bungalow colony, played games. We went and did different things. When I got off college in the summer, a lot of people go to Europe. They do different things. They have summer flings. What Anderson Cooper did every summer was he interned at the Central Intelligence Agency as an intern to learn, I guess, what an intern does at the Central Intelligence Agency. In his own memoir, he talks about not being sure. He ends up overseas. He doesn't know why he's overseas. He's searching, trying to see if he wants to be a news guy. And it's all a crock of shit. The point of the matter is, when you tell publicly that you interned at the CIA, you might as well be saying, I am a former CIA or current CIA operative, or have conduits into the CIA. Now, the reason Anderson Cooper is important is because when he first did it, being gay, he was not openly gay at the time, and the CIA would not hire anybody who was gay because they could be vulnerable to blackmail and other kinds of deceit. And
he's also Vanderbilt, though. And
right.
That comes,
the other part
I think that's very important
He's old.
Why he would be involved, or why they would care of those family connections.
Right.
We talked about it before. They're pretty huge.
Connections are very important. He's old American royalty. So that is I mean, they didn't know who he was going to become later, but I guarantee you they, helped him up the ladder to where he is today, as are how many people at CNN did I put down on that list, Eric?
I don't know, but we'll be going through them.
Okay. Well, I mean, the thing with Cooper, look, I mean, the guy, he has obviously become a force that America trusts, which is what they want. They don't want a Michael Avenatti, who, by the way, was sentenced to 30 months in prison today, and started.
He was.
Absolutely. And he was
saying, finally lose his law license, because it was like they weren't even going to take that away.
Law license. The guy's, he's going to prison for 30 months. The reality of it is, this guy was touted on CNN as the next Democratic presidential nominee. He was on there over 100 some odd times in a short period of time. And now look what has happened to this guy. He's going to federal prison. And, you could say what you want about Michael Cohen or whatever. Michael Cohen was not one of the leading figures on CNN who was supposed to be getting the Democratic nomination for president, as Michael Avenatti was, and being touted by CNN. I'm sure they're burning those tapes right now as I speak, but that's a fact. They're not going to cover that Avenatti broke down and cried in court today, begging for leniency, and got 30 months for trying to extort money from Nike. They're not going to do that. But I'll tell you something right now. Somebody did not like Michael Avenatti and took him out. And we don't know who that is, but, we have to surmise there's certain powers in the country that are pulling the strings at this point.
All right. Well, then let's go right into our next figure. And this guy is of prominence, and we'll talk about why in a minute, but let's talk about his background, and then we'll go into why it's
claims to be a CIA field operative. I don't know his complete background of what he did, but apparently a likable guy. He's got good ratings on Fox. He's on the radio, and he's got different followings. Like as I said, it doesn't matter what side they're on. This guy could just as easily be on CNN saying the opposite crap. But now he's on Fox, and he came on Tucker a bunch of times, and then he got his own show briefly. He was filling in for various people. And you say to yourself, okay, what's the deal with this guy? I mean, I don't know the deal with this guy. All I know is this is a former, according to him, CIA officer in the field, a tactical officer in the field. Okay, so he did that. It's not the same to me as having an Iraq war veteran come back and run for office, to have a military guy. That's not the same thing as somebody who is willing to come on TV and say, I was in Persian Gulf 1 and 2. I did this, I did that. Now I'm a civilian running for office. That's not what this guy is. This guy is saying, I'm a former CIA guy, trust me. And that's an impossibility. So now, as I said to you, the most treasured gift of the realm, the crown of the realm of the American right was Rush Limbaugh. He was the man, he was the voice of the American right for how many years? I mean, he got the congressional medal. Excuse me?
Since the 80s.
Right, absolutely. And, had the biggest following of any radio personality in American history. I mean, I was driving one time through the Midwest, and I was driving across the country. I was in Nebraska somewhere, and I was going state by state by state. And even through Nebraska and the whole region, as I turned the dial on the radio, he was on the next station after the next station after the next station. That's how big of a voice he had. So to give this job to Buck Sexton, a CIA agent, and nobody even bats a effing eyelash is outrageous. It really is outrageous. And the fact that I'm not a conservative, but I mean, the fact that conservatives sit on their hands and allow this to happen, a guy they revered almost in a religious manner, Rush Limbaugh, who was a genius by any stretch of the imagination, especially in terms of radio, to give it to this guy, a CIA agent, really? Really? Is that the smart thing to do, Eric? But that's what's happening. That's what's happening. Buck Sexton, the CIA operative, is now Rush Limbaugh. And if I were to tell you that 5 years ago, you would have laughed in my face. What a feather in the cap of the intelligence community.
Yeah, I mean, I would have expected like a Dan Bongino or something. Mm-hmm. That wouldn't have surprised me because he's kind of up there already. I think their politics are very close to each other, and former Secret Service, but that's fine. I don't know there's an issue with that. But yeah,
by the way, just checked, a black ex-cop is now the mayor of New York, which is one of the great pieces of uplifting news I've heard in months. When we had no good news on the planet Earth, to have a black ex-cop, New York City cop, as mayor is one. I have to take that as a win, based on today's standards. And they try to
compared to who he replaced. Good God!
Well,
that's a low bar.
I'm proud as a New Yorker. As a New Yorker, I'm proud that they finally woke up and elected a black cop. I mean, and they tried to steal it at the end and got caught. They got caught, and then they quickly gave up because they realized they were caught red effing handed. And Barris and Barnes explain it in great detail on their show. I won't go into it, but they got caught. They made the entire scandal go away, and an hour later they said he's the mayor. I've never seen a turn like that before. That was brilliant. So he's ironically running against Curtis Sliwa of the Guardian Angels, who I'd much rather see as mayor than the black ex-cop. Curtis Sliwa has paid his dues in the subways. In the 80s, Curtis Sliwa was, I don't know if you know who Curtis Sliwa was, of the Guardian Angels.
Yeah, he was the Guardian Angels. He was tied in with, who was it, Bernie Getz.
Bernie Getz.
Yeah, okay. All of that, that's all mixed together, right?
Yeah, he's running as a Republican against the ex-cop, Eric Anderson, I guess his name is. I forget his last name.
Okay, so yeah, I was going to say, so he's not actually mayor yet. He won the primary.
Right.
So you're happy. You're going to be happier with the results of mayor, no matter which way it goes. It sounds like. I mean, compared to De Blasio.
Oh no, obviously, yeah. I mean, they were running the sanitation chief, a woman who was the garbage lady, against the black cop, ex-cop. They were running the sanitation chief against him, which was really strange. And they had a BLM person, and they had Yang. I mean, look at Yang. Yang couldn't win the mayor Democratic nomination in New York. There wasn't a chance in hell of that guy winning that nomination. Nobody cared that this guy came from wherever he came from. I mean, the thing about the Eric, the cop, is he's the Brooklyn borough president. He's from Brooklyn. He beat the streets as a cop. The guy's the borough president of Brooklyn, for crying out loud. The guy should have walked in. And yet it was 51-49 with them pulling out 135,000 votes out of left field in the middle of the night. You know, give me a break. They were calling him Trump. They pounced on him immediately, saying he was Trump for complaining about the election. And he was right. And they quickly backed off.
I'm not sure if you can TLDR Curtis history.
Oh, okay. So Curtis Sliwa formed the Guardian Angels in response to a very similar situation today in New York, where crime was rampant, was going through the roof. It was before Brad got there, it was before Giuliani. And he patrolled with his mostly Puerto Rican friends who formed the Guardian Angels, Puerto Rican, black, and some whites, through the subway system to provide protection for the citizens who were quite happy that the Guardian Angels were there. I rode those subways. Nothing made you feel better than people applauding when Curtis Sliwa and the Guardian Angels walked through those subway cars in the 1970s in New York. I mean, it was staggering how important Curtis Sliwa was at the time. And in fact, you know, the connection to Bernie Goetz is not really a connection, other than you know, Bernie Goetz was repeatedly being robbed. He finally got a handgun. He was being robbed by 4 more black teens, and he finally had enough, and he shot them. You know, and that was the story of Bernie Goetz. I mean, then they ran him through the ringer, you know, because he had the audacity to defend himself after being beaten and robbed so many times that he finally fought back. You know, which is a lot of it led to Sliwa and the Guardian Angels. Which would make a fantastic film, by the way. I was talking to Thomas Jane about it just a couple months ago. He didn't know who Curtis Sliwa was either, and I thought, you know, a film has got to be made about the Guardian Angels. You know,
There's a lot of that, isn't there? I mean, like I've had covered the Sudanese Liberation Army with Brad Schreiber, and I mean Patty Hearst. I mean, a lot of crazy stuff that has kind of been forgotten. I mean, completely. And another example is. I had on a FBI bomb person, and he pointed out the numbers, and I just did not realize that in the early 70s, they were bombing the hell out of everything. And I knew that there were bombs. There was a couple post offices, but no, it was like hundreds of bombs.
Hundreds of bombs.
The
Weather Underground. Like, Weather Underground, literally, if I'm incorrect, 273 bombings in 1 year. I think that's a low estimate. They were bombing the Capitol, they bombed the laboratory, they bombed the post office, they bombed every single structure well, they blew up a townhouse in the West Village, killing themselves. You know, that was one thing. Dustin Hoffman lived next door to that townhouse in the West Village. That was them by mistake blowing themselves up, but intentionally. They were able to plant explosives all through Washington, D.C. They blew up police stations. They blew up a lot of different things. And when they went underground and came back, they just got a slap on the wrist. And they
commuted.
Sons and daughters.
Yeah, Clinton commuted Bernadette Dorn.
Right. Well, they all got commuted. Every single one of them got commuted. I mean, or you know, the fact that the DA of San Francisco's mother has gotten out of prison, and she was involved in the bank robbery in Westchester County, I believe it was, with the I want to say the Black Liberation Army. I forget the full name. It was a New York Westchester, or New York-based, Harlem-based group that was into cocaine and chiropractic, if that's a combination, CNC, and. She was, I mean, 2 guards were killed, and 1 was black. It was the armored car heist up there, notorious robbery. And she finally got out of prison. I think Obama pardoned her or paroled her. And Bowden is the child of her. And Bowden was raised by Bernardine Dorn and Bill Ayers out of Chicago, while the mother was serving time for the murder bank robbery in Westchester County, New York. And now
she's Bill Ayers, who was an advisor to Obama, They're
Right.
close friends.
Right.
Yeah, that same dude. Yeah,
The
I got a
same
good
dude
time.
who ghost wrote Obama's first memoir by his own admission. He was the ghostwriter and writer of Obama's book that sold millions of copies. How do I know that? Because Bill Ayers says he did. That's why. Bill Ayers put in nautical references all through the book. Yeah, that one I don't know about. But Bill Ayers wrote Obama's first book as a ghostwriter, got paid, demanded more money, and typical of Obama, he boxed him out, never spoke to him again. So you can take what you want out of that. But what Bill Ayers says was that Bill Ayers himself was a merchant marine, and he points out all the different nautical references that he puts in the book. And Obama was never at sea as a merchant marine, so it's kind of funny. But yeah,
Well, you know what? I'm happy he got frozen out. Tough shit. He's a scumbag.
No.
I have no love for Air. I don't really care for either, really. But
they
good.
raised the current DA of San Francisco as their child, who then went and worked with a dictator in Venezuela named Hugo Chavez. That was his last job on his resume, was working as an interpreter for Hugo Chavez. So, of course, the next step up the ladder is to become the district attorney of San Francisco. Everybody knows that. Once you're the dictator's translator in Venezuela, the obvious next job is district attorney of a major American city, right, Eric?
You know what this sounds? This sounds like the Mueller path.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that where it's like, well, all of a sudden they're over here for some crazy ass reason. Then boom, they're over here for some.
Right.
So you know, hey, it goes all around. And by the way, that's Republicans. So we're gonna pick on all parties.
Yeah.
Let's jump to our next fine candidate.
This is Bob Baer, Robert Baer. Is that who this is?
Yep.
He's a little old. I don't remember. Yeah, he's aged a little bit. I'm sorry. So Bob Baer. By the way, the movie Syriana is based on his life as a CIA operative, in case anybody's interested, which is why they do this. In other words, you have a guy like Bob Baer. Okay, he's on CNN and he's smoothing over the news or controlling some elements of the news. But then they also move into Hollywood. So now they make a movie based, quote unquote, on what his cockamamie bullshit is. Who knows how much veracity is in it? They want this guy to look good. They want the CIA to look good. So they make the movie Syriana. What I like is the fact that the name of his character in the movie is Robert Barnes. that I think that's the funniest part of the movie. Later on, Bob Baer was hosting a show, I think 2 years ago, In Search of Oswald. I think it might have been on Discovery Channel. He was tracking Oswald's movements through wherever Oswald went, or trying to find something on Oswald, multi-part series. And so much of it was fallacious, I couldn't even watch it anymore. It was just insane.
You know, the next guy, you had me pull a picture of him. He's been on Rogan a bunch of times. He's very, very open that is a CIA guy, but he seems to be kind of almost on the same team of not necessarily being pro-CIA, even though he was. And that's Mike Baker.
Yeah, I don't know much about Baker. I mean, look, obviously Rogan has lets everybody on the show. Let me just put it that way. I mean, it's weird how open he is without vetting these people. I don't know what Mike Baker's story is. The point of the matter is the infiltration of American media. They're not doing it for any other reason but intelligence purposes. You think Mike Baker gives a shit about Joe Rogan? He wants to be a part so they can get inside information on whatever Rogan's got going on, whatever CNN's got going on, whatever MSNBC's got going on, Fox. They want to be there first. They want to sit in a room with a bunch of editors and find out what they're thinking and what they're doing. It couldn't be more obvious. You know, how we stop them is through legislation. You have to pass legislation that these guys cannot be in American media. It's just common sense. And this has no party. I'm saying it has nothing to do with Democrat or Republican. You have to have legislation. We have certain legislation about lobbyists, right, Eric? Isn't there like a 7-year waiting period when you leave?
Technically, military. Right. It depends on what your job is, and it's not really enough of a period. Because
but there is
that's why we have think tanks.
We
I
have
mean,
think
think
tanks.
tanks are
Hold
nothing
on,
more
hold
than a
on. I
parking
have to
spot
take
to
it.
give you a salary.
I have to take a huge hit off this water. Sorry, go on. You were saying?
Yeah, I understand. Well, think tanks are nothing more than a, shall we say, free parking on the monopoly money that they're going to pick up later. So you leave you leave the government, you leave the military. You know that you've got deals with all the defense contractors, whatever. You helped accomplish them. You helped approve the contracts, whatever. And then when you leave, you can't technically be hired. So where
Right.
do you go? You go to a think tank, and
Right.
it is like a nice, perfect fraternity for ex connected people, whatever you want to call it. And then they drift in and out of the think tank as a nice holding pattern.
Look, I agree. The lobbying laws didn't exist until 10 or 15 years ago, I believe, and I think the same laws should be constructed to prevent CIA, NSA. Look, do you want James Clapper leaving the intelligence community and being the host of a show on CNN with his defense clearance and his security clearances the next day? I mean, he's literally using that to pave the way to a $2.5 million salary to be an analyst. I mean, it's insane. It's insane. No democracy could function like this. You
Well, he's a
can't.
bad choice because I can't think of many things I want him to do. I wouldn't want him as a crossing guard.
No, I agree. I mean, the same thing. I mean, the same thing with John Brennan. I mean, we'll get into Obama's family in a later episode, but the situation in Indonesia when Obama was a kid, years later before he became president, right before they went village to village with a crew of CIA operatives telling everyone to shut the F up if the media comes to ask them about Obama's childhood in Indonesia. And leading that crew was a man named John Brennan, who later became his CIA chief. That's how Brennan made his bones with Obama. I'm sure he did some other things, but he was the one leading this gang of thugs through Indonesia, threatening them if they talk to the media, there'll be consequences. So,
By the way, I've had some CIA people on.
I noticed,
and I know some.
You have to get some more on because there's not enough. There's just not enough.
Hey, I got to get my beak wet, to quote Corolla.
Yeah.
But let's just say that there are almost different sides within the CIA.
Okay.
Not every one of them is a corrupt creep. There's a war within, especially as times have shifted. So you have like old school, which kind of are much more right wing angled one. Then you have the Brennans, and I have heard not positive things about Brennan from people who know him directly.
Really?
Not positive at all.
I'm surprised. I really am.
The guy. Yeah.
I thought he was a good guy, and it's sad. What happened to him really is. Yeah. Guy's a mad dog. I mean, let's face it. He's a mad dog. Clapper's a mad dog. These people should be nowhere near the levels of power in any form of government, even at the local level. They should not be in charge of a school board. These are corrupt liars that are through and through, really archaic holdovers from the Cold War against the Soviets that have probably been bought off by the Chinese at this point. I mean, put it this way. There was what's the guy's name? Gus, who ran the American Communist Party. Gus Hall. Gus Hall. Gus Hall had a running mate. Gus Hall had a running mate for vice president. Gus Hall was the head of the American Communist Party. His running mate was Angela Davis of the Black Panther Party. So it was an incredible multicultural ticket. You had Gus Hall, and then you had Angela Davis. So John Brennan brags about voting for that ticket. Now, I don't know what CIA chief and what parallel universe would say that I voted for the head of the American Communist Party and the head of the Black Panther Party in order to get a job as the head of the CIA. I could see him getting a job at the Southern Poverty Law Center. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Or some other, thing, Black Lives Matter. But John Brennan claims in public and bragging before the Black Congressional Caucus that he voted for Gus Hall and Angela Davis. Even I didn't vote for Gus Hall and Angela Davis. And I had the American Freedom Party, or American Peace and Freedom Party, or some leftist party, come to me at one point, this is in the 80s, to see if I'd be interested in running on a ticket with Timothy Leary as vice president. I forgot to tell you this.
Oh, dude.
I swear to God, I just remembered
Just
that.
to hang out with Leary would have been amazing.
Leary told me a great story one time. He said that he was speaking before a sold-out crowd at the University of Chicago in an auditorium. It must have been like 8,000 people. I don't know the University of Chicago, but he was speaking to a huge crowd of students. And he forgets his trend of thought. He doesn't know where he is, right? And he just loses his rap because it was getting old. And he comes back and he looks at them and he just says, senility, what a great effing high. And they just cracked up laughing. And Leary told me that himself. I just thought that was a great story. Great story.
What a great comeback too. All right, so on to
I don't know who Tara Miller. I know she's somebody, but I don't know where she is now. Tara Maller.
At least she's identified.
Yeah, and I don't think she's identified anymore. We're gonna have to look it up. But CIA military analyst. I mean, there's a lot of girls too. I mean, don't forget Valerie Plame and that whole thing that was made into a movie with Sean Penn. You know, about Plame and her husband. Think about all these movies that were generated, you know, just because they were CIA people. I mean, it's a lot of stuff that was generated in the 80s and 90s. You know, we're a far cry from 3 Days of the Condor, where Robert Redford is just running because he reads books. He's just a book reader. Who's the one on the right?
Valerie Plame.
Oh, Valerie Plame, right? Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, Valerie.
I'm trying to keep up.
Valerie Plame.
Rogues gallery here of Bob Baer, Anderson Cooper, and Valerie Plame.
Other than the Soviet Union, what country would have 3 CIA analysts on the same show in the same block of video programming other than ours? Look at that. CIA. It's like pulling the lever in Vegas and hitting all diamonds. You know what I mean? And it just comes flowing out, all the coinage. You know.
Well, I'm sure that there are some coins involved that might be involved with black budgets. And
by the way, I just want to point out one thing. Anderson Cooper had such a stable, balanced family, his background, that one Thanksgiving dinner, his brother got up the table and dove out the window of the living room to his death. Go on.
Wow.
Okay.
I mean, I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry.
He got up from the table. He got up from the table and he ran and dove out the window head first to his death during Thanksgiving. I mean, is that the type of person, that family that you want in the intelligence community? Might be damaged. I don't know.
Well, I don't know. Judging by their recruitment now, absolutely.
Right.
I mean, you know what's so funny is talking earlier about the recruitment now.
Mm-hmm.
Ironically, that's who you would recruit to be an asset,
right?
Not an officer,
right?
You would go to another country and you would find people like that who are very uncertain of their identity or how they fit in or whatever else, and recruit them to flip. So it's almost like the CIA is recruiting all of the people who would never get a clearance in the past.
Well, also, I think once the Soviet Union collapsed, they lost their way. You know, there was no enemy there anymore. It's an enemy that'd been there for so long, Eric, you know, that they simply lost their way and began to make these movies and got into anti-terrorism stuff. And that kind of dissipated because the left embraced they embraced Iran, they embraced the Palestinians, they in essence embraced the terrorist community. Am I wrong? I mean, they have put their arms around them.
China. And now China. That's why I was thinking about just now. Remember, the people they're recruiting for the CIA are literally who would be recruited as assets. It's almost as if the CIA might be run by China because they're recruiting assets within the government.
Well, the fact that you never hear, and I said this, you hear about Savak, you hear about Mossad in American pop culture, you hear a shitload about the KGB, even though they don't exist anymore. You hear about the NSA all the time. You hear about the CIA all the time. You hear about the FBI all the time. You hear about all these organizations all the time. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you heard about the Communist Chinese Intelligence Organization?
CCP? Well,
yeah, no. Their intelligence division, not CCP. Their CIA of the Communist Chinese Party. When was the last time in pop culture or media that you heard about the CIA of China?
Never.
Thank you for your answer. Tell him what he's won, Bob. You've won an expense-paid trip to Puerto Vallarta. Absolutely true. You think that's an accident?
Sadly, no.
Right. Okay.
Sadly, no.
Right.
All right. So next on the roster,
Who's this guy?
Aki Peretz. Or
Is
Aki
he-
Peretz.
Peretz. Him, I don't remember. Is it a family guy? Is he?
I don't know. He was on your list.
I have to look him up. It's been a couple of years. We'll get back to that guy. I don't remember him.
Philip Mudd.
This guy's a maniac. I mean, this guy, I think, was FBI and CIA. He's like the left-wing Bongino, this guy, Philip Mudd. I think he goes back, and I'll have to check this out. I believe he goes back all the way to Dr. Mudd, who fixed the broken leg of John Wilkes Booth when he was riding out of D.C. on his horse.
Way.
I believe that's a fact of life. And there was a newscaster in New York named Mudd who claimed that he was the descendant of Dr. Mudd. And I believe that Philip Mudd is the descendant of Dr. Mudd. Guarantee you, bro. Guarantee you. We had a guy named Roger Mudd, who was a big CBS. Roger Mudd was a huge national CBS analyst. He was jilted to become the next Walter Cronkite. He was slated to move into the anchor seat. They burned him. He was embittered and eventually quit CBS News, Roger Mudd. Roger Mudd was a direct descendant of Dr. Mudd in the John Wilkes Booth case. And Mudd was sent to, was not hung, by the way. Because he only set the leg, Mudd was sent to Devil's Island, I think, for imprisonment for many years. And this guy, I think I looked it up once.
Elmer Mudd?
No.
Okay.
He's saying Elmer Fudd. I guess it's an internet joke. But this Mudd, Philip Mudd, is also a wild dog. I mean, he has said the craziest stuff. I don't know where he went to, if he's still on CNN anymore, but he ranting and raving all the time. A loose cannon.
Well, and Roger Mudd was competing against Rather, right?
Yes, that's what Dan Rather's seat. That's right. The open seat left by Cronkite. No,
I think so. Yeah. And then, of course, Rather.
Dan Rather.
This is mind-blowing, by the way. Rather eventually was shamed and run out of the business for making up a story, a complete hack. Mm-hmm. And people are holding him up like he's an old-timey, great journalist now. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, he's tried to
rehabilitate himself.
But going back to Dan Rather, made his bones on Dealey Plaza's grassy knoll. Nobody realized that
he was the reporter.
He forced his way in to see the Zapruder film when it was kicking around the day of the transfer of the film. He got in there to see the film, came out, and he said to the public on the news that the shot against Kennedy's head made it go forward. The shot from behind made his head go forward clearly in the film. And as we now know in the film, his head goes back into the left, as demonstrated in JFK. What this guy did, what Dan Rather did, the first big lie, was to come out, say he saw the Zapruder film, and he said it's crystal clear that he was shot from behind because his head and his body go forward and down. Okay. When Dan Rather later toured colleges in the late 70s as doing a lecture circuit, the entire college community would chant back and to the left to taunt him because he lied about what he'd seen in the Zapruder film. And they would just chant back and to the left every time he spoke at colleges.
Well, it makes me wonder if maybe he had a tie to
well, that's how he made his bones, Eric. That's how you make your bones, by doing stuff like that. I mean, they don't just give out anchor seats. I mean, this guy lied and somebody approved of that lie. I mean, look, Gerald Ford moved the sketch on the autopsy from the back of Kennedy's shoulder to the back of his neck and admitted it on the autopsy sketches. He moved the bullet hole during the Warren Commission. He admitted he did it for the good of the American people, to explain the trajectory better, because the back right shoulder of JFK was where a bullet penetrated about a half an inch. So he took that hole with his pencil, and he moved it to the back lower portion of Kennedy's neck to explain the trajectory of the bullet from behind coming out of his throat, which it never did, of course. And the only reason I know that is because Gerald Ford said he did it.
You know what? I was just thinking about it. It is ironic, though. The CIA probably helped rather get his position, but then rather lost his position when he went after a certain president who was the son of another president who was also the director of the CIA.
Absolutely. I mean, what do you
Strange
think?
coincidence?
No, of course not. He made a couple of phone calls, and that was the end of Dan Rather. I mean, 6 ways to Sunday, as Chuck Schumer says, right, Eric?
There you go.
Right.
And well, he also says the erection.
The erection. Oh, yeah. But all right, who else we got on our list? Let's see.
We have
Dana Bash. Her husband is a CIA. I forget his name. Something Bash. Jeremy Bash is CIA. So
her ex-husband, I guess. Now
ex-husband, yeah. So he never called her ever again after they broke up. I'm sure never tried to get any information out of her ever again. Is that him on the right? He looks like a character from an SNL sketch.
It is him on the right. Yeah.
What? He's got tons of makeup on. Looks like he's impersonating himself. Very strange.
I don't know. Maybe they're cross-dressing.
But the point of the matter is, this is an intelligence couple like Valerie Plame and her husband. So
that
explains that. Yeah.
All
Keep
right.
in mind, this is just CNN that we're talking about, and MSNBC cable. God knows what's going on at NBC News or ABC News or CBS News. You know.
Well, let's talk about another network here, and let's talk about this thing that I pulled up.
Okay.
This is a CIA lapel pin.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah, and
what lapel can that possibly fit on? That thing looks to be huge. You could probably see that on TV if a guy wore it on TV, right?
I don't know. Maybe.
Oh, Jesus. Oh, look at that. Oh, my God. Oh, Jesus. What can that mean? What man in this day and age, and I guess there's only one man doing it, would wear a CIA lapel pin underneath the American flag pin? I don't think a visual modern day media photo could possibly sum up the shithole that we're in right now than that photo. And I don't mean anything personal about Hannity. I just mean the photo, the juxtaposition of the CIA pin and the American flag pin. The fact that that guy, who's the lead anchor, I guess, on Fox at night, is wearing those two together. I mean, that's where we are right now as a nation.
Yeah.
I mean, it's bizarre. It's bizarre. I would think it would be bizarre if Don Lemon was wearing a BLM pin, but this thing is 10 times more bizarre.
Well, and it's shocking too, in that sense that because he is just flat out wearing it right there in front of everybody, and right. I don't know why.
Glenn Greenwald said last night on Tucker. He said they are not only spying on you, not only reading your emails, but they're telling you they're doing it to taunt you, which is what they do. They want you to know that they're doing this and can do this to you at any time to put the fear of God into you. Now, I don't know what they have on Hannity, to make him do that. I'm sure Hannity didn't wake up one day and say, God, I love the CIA so much. I wish I had an effing lapel pin. I mean, something transpired where somebody gave him that pin and said, we'd like you to wear this as a sign of homage or a sign of something. I mean, the American flag pin is one thing, but who the hell runs around on Fox or any show with a CIA lapel pin? It's insane. Is there an NSA pin? Can I get one of those?
Also, Hannity was super tight with Trump, wasn't he?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Who wanted the CIA?
Kind of makes me wonder, doesn't it?
Look, stranger things have happened. I mean, you can't trust anybody nowadays because now these our enemies are now internal,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, maybe they are watching me.
Well, I know they're watching me, that's for sure. So you're going to have guilt by association. They've been on me for years.
No, you and Oliver. Were they on you?
Well, it started before. I was working for Crooks and Liars on the left and covering the butterfly ballot election in West Palm Beach. I was down there, doing that. I was on the left, but I mean, I was the same guy, but that was a leftist, pretty big website. And John Amato and I, who was the editor, would be on the phone, and we'd hear them talking in the background, and we'd go, "Bro, we can hear you talking," like it was ridiculous. And then when I started to work for Oliver, it just escalated years later, and I had a military intelligence guy come over to my house posing as a AT&T employee, and AT&T came the next day, and I told them this guy was here, and they sent AT&T security over. They removed 8 wiretaps from my landline down in the basement of my house here. So
now, let's talk about that and close out on that, because I have wondered. You were obviously on the left at one point. I mean, I think anybody if you're a Lenny Bruce aficionado, did you actually shift, or did the Overton window shift away from you?
No, I haven't. I'm just looking at it as a free thinker. I have not changed at all. I mean, look, I voted for Obama twice. I mean, it is what it is. I voted for Hillary Clinton a bunch of times, and then the move of that party became the American Communist Party. I mean, I'm not welcome there anymore. I mean, you look at Dershowitz, he says his party moved and he's still in it. I can't in good conscience be part of that. I mean, I'm still a registered Democrat, but I mean, I'm, voting on the right-hand side of the aisle now, when I can, obviously.
You're like a Kennedy Democrat in a lot of ways.
Like a Kennedy Democrat. Like I said to Barnes the other day, my grandfather was a campaign manager. He was a Democratic campaign manager for the mayor of New York in 1950. Impellitteri is a one-term mayor, and my grandfather was part of the Meade Esposito Democratic machine in Brooklyn as an accountant and bagman. As I said, he worked as a campaign manager for Impellitteri against the Tammany Hall candidate. Later on, Robert Wagner came in, but I grew up in a completely Democratic household. I mean, a union household. My father was union. It's just a regular Kennedy Democrats is really the background.
And I wonder about this, and you actually have known some of these people, but I kind of wonder, like, if Abby Hoffman were alive today, if he might be hanging out with Alex Jones. As odd as that sounds,
I know it's weird because I see that in a lot of people. I see that in Jon Stewart coming on and dueling with Stephen Colbert the other night. I see Bill Maher chafing at the bit. I know this guy doesn't buy this commie horseshit. Comics don't buy this shit. I essentially consider myself a comic. Comics are the tip of the spear. We are just free thinkers. It's not about parties for us. We have built-in bullshit detectors. That's what makes a comic. That's what Lenny Bruce had. If Lenny Bruce was alive today, he'd be railing against the Democrats and the DNC. There's very little doubt in my mind that Abby would be doing the same thing. I see Jon Stewart trying to do it. I see Louis C.K. being sent to the basement as punishment. You know what I mean? I see Maher and these guys wanting to bust out, but they can't, because they're trapped in that bubble. And the pressure is so enormous, the damage is so demonstrative if they act out that, they're kind of sticking their toe in the water, the way I see it right now, Eric. I mean, each week is another revelation from Bill Maher that he's not going to take it anymore. Eventually, I think they're going to replace him, with somebody else. But, that's the price he's going to have to pay, I think.
Yeah, no, they keep bringing up George Carlin. I agree. I mean, Carlin, I think, which is so funny because Carlin is pretty anti-authority.
Right.
I mean, well, he was a protege of Lenny Bruce in a lot of ways.
Right. I mean, I knew Carlin pretty well the last, I want to say 5 years of his life. I became pretty intimate with him. And
really,
he was anti-authority. I mean, just like Lenny and just like, everybody else is a comedian. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, it's not just comedians, it's writers, it's free thinkers. I challenge you to tell me, even during the Soviet Union, great literature came out of the Soviet Union. Great films came out of the Soviet Union. Great stuff came out of the Soviet Union as art, from Solzhenitsyn to Tolstoy, all down the line. Tell me the great novelists of communist China. Tell me the great films of communist China. Tell me the great art that's coming out of communist China, a atheistic, brutal, totalitarian regime. Tell me the art that's coming out of there, and you will understand where we're headed. Tell me the great films that are being made today in the United States. They don't exist. They do not exist. Art is the first casualty of totalitarianism.
Ouch. This is a well-played comment. Eric Hunley, and then there's Rage Against the Machine that are now the voice of the machine.
I mean, Morello, I guess, is a communist. So Morello is the voice of that band. I don't know what else to say about Rage Against the Machine other than they did a great cover of "Kick Out the Jams," Wayne Kramer song on the MC5. I've seen Rage a bunch of times, so I'm a fan. But obviously, they've got different politics now.
Well, no, but they're selectively political in the sense that they're absolutely communists, but make sure they get $200 a head for tickets to their concert. Yeah, they're the typical hypocritical communist, and good on them. Make your own.
I don't know.
Make some hay while the sun's shining.
Right. I mean, we're in dark times right now. I just want to give a shout out, if I could, to this guy, Matt Brainerd. I don't know if you know who he is.
Heard the name.
Okay, so Matt Brainerd has a group called Look Ahead America, and they have a website called lookaheadamerica.org. Lookaheadamerica.org. Matt Brainerd he's been
collecting the results on the election.
Right? He's a voting integrity guy, but in this particular case, he has organized buses to Washington for the 17th of July, which is this week, to protest the January 6th 500 prisoners who are in solitary confinement under lock and key in a DC jail. He is taking buses from all across the country in a massive effort to speak out against this political prisoner chaos that's going on in DC right now, where they can't get lawyers, they can't get bail, they have no trials. There's just 556 people who have been charged with essentially nothing. So if you want to get on one of those buses, which I strongly urge you to do, reach out to Matt Brainerd at lookaheadamerica.org, and he'll put you on a bus. And you got to do something. You can't just sit at home watching, live streams and Netflix all day long. You got to get off your ass. On the left, and I've been at a million anti-war protests, the slightest event would happen and there would be a million people in the street. I remember Abby Hoffman saying he was going to levitate the Pentagon at that protest in DC. And, having all the generals run out of the Pentagon, Eric, in fear that he was going to levitate the Pentagon, while Allen Ginsberg was chanting right next to him with little finger symbols, and the generals literally ran out of the Pentagon thinking that Abby Hoffman was going to levitate it and it was going to cause some trouble. So you can make a statement, whether it's through guerrilla theater, whether it's through art, whether it's through getting on a bus and going to this prison and just standing outside silently. The time for being quiet is over. We're up against the Communist Chinese Party. They may be disguised as AOC. They may be disguised as a lot of different people and not show their face. But essentially, when I see an Anderson Cooper, I see a Chinese guy with bottled glasses on, telling me the Chinese Communist Party line. And we could sit here and take it like a frog boiling in a pot slowly, or we can get off our frog ass and do something about it. And I'm not talking about bomb throwing. I'm just talking about merely showing up, in a Gandhi-like way and just making a statement with your body. I don't think that's hard to ask. You know what I mean? Like the free speech advocates in Berkeley, he simply said at some point it becomes so odious that you have to throw your body on the gears of the machine to stop it. And that was the beginning of the free speech movement in Berkeley. I mean, at some point, enough is enough already with this situation that we're going through, Eric.
Oh, well said. Perfect close on that. I don't know what subject we're going to cover next. It probably won't be CIA, but it might.
Okay. We could go into Abby. We can go into Lenny. We could go into, I gave you the list. You've got the master list.
Yeah. Guess what? Unstructured.locals.com. Look out for some polls, and then you all can help decide.
Let the people decide.
Cover next. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'll see everybody next